Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, If I Told You It Wouldn't Be Hidden. In the early noughties, I took a contract job with one of my previous employers. They wanted someone they didn't have to train and that needed no supervision, and were willing to pay me the almost incredible amount I demanded to smooth my hurt feelings from the layoff. The job was easy. Age out 5 years of files to match their new retention scheme, at my convenience. The new people the company had acquired in my absence, however, didn't want to let it be easy. Every evening I'd return to my office to find it unlocked and rifled through. Boxes would have their security seals cut open, inventory lists would be missing, and entire stacks of files would mysteriously make their way back to the file room. You better bet I raised hell up the chain, but the requests made on my behalf seemed to fall on deaf ears. One of the perps even had the nerve to email me, saying I was only a temp and that if I had a file she wanted, she would get it and there was nothing short of hiding them that would stop her. So that's what I did. In the back of the warehouse was a small room they'd once used to store coolant for mainframes, and I happened to know where a spare key was kept. All 4,100 files were vanished from my office and the file room and hidden away there. Shit hit the fan Monday morning when the perp who'd emailed me couldn't find an 11-year-old file she wanted. After letting herself into my office and finding it bare, she had the nerve to complain over email. Perp. I can't find file 90,117 in the file room or in your office. Me. That's because I took your fantastic suggestion and hid it, as well as every other file about to be aged out. They are not available, please use the digital archive. Perp. Where did you hide it? Me. If I told you it would no longer be hidden. Use the digital archive. Perp. Listen, you insubordinate little idiot. I want that file, and I want it delivered to my desk now. Me. You can't always get what you want. Use the digital archive. Her final email, CC'd to her boss, called me a loser and suggested I get my unemployment forms filled out. Her boss had other ideas. Boss. Please come see me. Obviously my last instruction to stay out of other people's offices was insufficient. We will also need to have a discussion about how emailing a very expensive consultant with improper demands has probably cost the company more than we pay you in a week. From that point on I made to show up just early enough to catch the perp on her way out the door and smile at her. Next one is titled, They Told Us to Clock Out. So I spent 10 years working for a company, and hoped to go back to working for them after the lockdown, that didn't make us clock out for lunch. We worked at job sites spread all over 3 counties and expecting everyone to drive back to the shop to clock out for lunch was ridiculous. About 5 years ago, the company got bought by an investment firm that decided they were going to increase efficiency and oversight. Our old-time clock model was simple. You spend 9 hours on the clock, spend an hour of that time on lunch break, and get paid for 8. Now, admittedly, some people would abuse the system and disappear for more than an hour. But the new owners didn't want to make waves by directly confronting the offenders. So, instead, they instituted a new policy that everyone had to head back to the shop and clock out for lunch in the middle of their shift. Then, after lunch, clock back in and head back to their sites. Productivity obviously plummeted and that probably would have done away with the policy within a few months, but a few coworkers and I took it a step further. When we got back to the shop we'd clock out, wolf down a sandwich, pound an energy drink, clock back in and head back to the site 5 minutes later. This meant that we were spending 8 hours and 55 minutes on the clock every day. They couldn't say anything because we really were only spending 5 minutes at lunch and spending all of our time on the clock at the site or traveling to it. Having to pay half a dozen guys an extra 5 hours of overtime a week got their attention real quick. The new system lasted 3 weeks. The best part, even though we went straight back to the site, we couldn't start working until the people who took the full hour got back. So we would spend an hour getting paid time and a half to watch YouTube videos on our phones. Next one is titled, Read My Terms of Payment OK. So recently, the day after my birthday, I got a sudden email notification 10 days ago. For year subscription to a game I gave up playing. Filing tickets and not getting any type of resolution or response. The payment was done through PayPal. They apparently set up an annual auto-pay. This I had no recollection of agreeing to. I immediately disputed this charge as unauthorized as I never agreed to anything new this year. They denied the request and I put in a recall with my bank. I was upset as the money came out and funds were low. PayPal told me I should be reading my payment agreements and I was left in the dumps. I was smoking a joint down by the canal and then remembered we have a new tax in Canada, a digital tax on digital subscriptions. They never charged this or asked for permission like other subscription services had. I reached out to Consumer Protection in Quebec. Once my issue was clarified, I learned that it is illegal to have an auto-renew on an annual subscription. By law, you must be notified 90 days before the subscription fails. Then you must log in before that date to renew it yourself. Thus, an auto-pay renew is not a legal authorized transaction. So I was about to go through some forms I was going to do to get PayPal to listen, but then I decided to see if I can call after finding a number to call them. I advised of the law and they seemed surprised. I gave them more information and they advised they get back to within 9 days. Well, an hour later I get an email notification that my transaction was found to be an unauthorized transaction. They so far have only refunded to my PayPal and not my bank account. Moral of the story: yeah, read your payment agreements. Also know your rights. In Quebec, if not all of Canada, you cannot be bound to an auto-renewal for an annual subscription. It is considered a fixed-term agreement. Do not just fall down. If a mod questions this, I can definitely prove this. I will be getting my money back. Edit: just in case I am asked. I am recovering $126.49. On a tight budget, it meant a lot. Next one is titled, You Would Like to Cancel? Let me set that up for you. Not my story, but my mother's, and not even necessarily a singular story, but just an event that plays out from time to time. On to the pseudo-story. My mother works for a large telecom company, and, while she technically works in the customer service sector of the company, she is far higher on the ladder than that. If you're getting communication from my mother or her team, either the company screwed up, or, more likely, you done goofed. We're talking cease and desist letters, or simply hard lockdown on credits to your account due to abuse. Many of the people she talks to have not paid their bill in months or even years, because they continuously call in and shop for a rep to give them credits, through either a sob story of a lie or verbal abuse. For those unaware, standard customer service agent is graded on retention. To have a customer cancel under you is a big deal, so if a caller even mentions cancel, then many agents will bend over backwards to appease them, regardless of merit. My mother has no such metric. I'm sure you can see where this is going. A fair few calls go as follows. Mother, and due to the behavior and history on your account, you are no longer eligible to receive any credits without a review from department, and the credits applied on date will be reversed. You bill of amount will be due on date. Customer, what? This is outrageous. You can't do this. If you don't apply these credits, then I am just going to cancel. Mother. Some pause and typing later. Okay, I am processing your cancellation now. Your final service date will be date. Is address the correct address to send your final bill to? Customer, what do you mean? You can't cancel my service. Mother. I'm sorry, you said you wanted to cancel. Was that incorrect? Many of them will go into how they're a paying customer, which is complete BS, of course. Depending on their attitude or wording, she will have already processed the cancel before she says anything. For instance, if they've been exceptionally rude and happen to say something along the line of, just cancel my service, then, because they've learned those words work, she'll just close their account and inform them of final steps. Next one is titled, Small victories for a child in a divorce. Summer of 2002, 5th grade for me. Split visitation ducking sucks, but it was manageable during the school year because parent 1 could drop me at school and then parent 2 could pick me up afterward without the drama of having to see each other devolve into a shouting match. It was also no secret that I absolutely hated my father, but I was also absolutely terrified of him, and he knew the latter part and used it to his advantage. Basically everything he made me do, say, act was through fear of him. Without the buffer of school, split visitation in the summer was hell. I'm not sure if it was a product of how much my parents grew to hate each other, or some sick twisted joke that made a judge laugh, but part of the custody agreement is that my parent would walk me out to whichever parent was doing the picking up, which basically forced face-to-face confrontations every time the schedule demanded that I be shuffled from one house to another. One summer day, here comes my father's big truck pulling into a guest spot and my mother walks me out. I don't know if something had happened between them over the phone, but my mom was in some type of mood and just letting my father have it, while he sat there with the truck door open. However, she was in my way and I knew not to push past people. Not that I even wanted to go with him, so any amount of time I wasn't sitting down in his truck meant a couple more seconds of freedom. They have it out for a couple of minutes with my father's truck idling, him demanding I get in the truck, my mother saying no because she knows that as soon as I'm in the truck, he can drive away. I'm absolutely terrified at this point because he's getting more and more angry that I'm not listening to him, but I can't get in the truck because my mother is standing in the way. What am I gonna do? Interrupt? Are you insane? Finally, after what seemed to drag on for ages, my father explodes and utters the ultimatum. Either get in the car or go back inside. Inside? He's giving me an option? Freedom. I picked up my backpack and scurried back inside the house as quickly as my legs would take me, diving into my room and closing the door. It wouldn't be until later that my mother told me he was shocked, absolutely flabbergasted, that I hadn't gotten in the truck with him, who I hated, to go to a house I also hated, and that he had thought I would have chosen to get in the truck. From what she said, after I had gotten back inside the house, he sat there for a moment, said nothing, threw the truck in reverse and left. He didn't come back the whole weekend for me, so I got 2 weekends with my mom. There's a sequel to this story where he tried to take my mother back to court over not getting his weekend and I had to appear and relay the same story. I remember the mediator, because judges didn't hear family cases back then, rubbing his temples and letting us go because, you gave him the ducking option. What did you think he was gonna do? Next one is titled, It's Not 9 a.m. Yet. I worked for a small startup for the first few years of my career. My boss, CEO, seemed to be still grasping object permanence, as he had a hard time wrapping his head around people working when he could not physically see them doing so. But he was getting better over time. Business hours were 9 to 6. But all of our work could be done from home and we had an office in Australia that some people communicated directly with, and tight release schedules sometimes meant long nights followed by late starts. So the informal policy tended to be as long as you were in the office by 10 and not leaving before 5, you didn't need to explain yourself, and anything beyond that was fine as long as you gave someone a heads up. Especially if you were managed by the CEO who was too busy to pay close attention to people's exact arrivals and departures and frequently away from the office himself speaking at various events. Enter our new VP, a 30-something milquetoast MBA type. Unlike the CEO, he was not too busy to pay attention to arrivals and departures, and told the CEO that obviously the lazy employees were taking advantage. The CEO, who again was sort of inclined this direction himself, sends out an email one Friday saying that from this point forward, people needed to be in the office every day by 9 and they needed permission from their manager to leave before 6. Everyone was pissed, but there was no real sense of long-term concern. This wasn't the first arbitrary rule that had been handed down in this fashion, and it tended to be easiest to play along for a week or two until the CEO had moved on to the next thing and then just ignore the rule. But the next Monday when I showed up at 8:50, 2 of my coworkers were sitting on the stairs to the unoccupied next floor, just talking and playing Candy Crush. What are you doing? It's not 9 a.m. yet. I sat down with them and soon someone else arrived and the same conversation played out. At 8:59, we all got up and walked into the office. On Tuesday, there were half a dozen people on the stairs, including leadership, chatting and texting and whatever. And when the VP arrived, people would just make hard eye contact while he squirmed. Meanwhile, myself and a few other people just said screw it and arrived after 9 a.m. anyway, looking the VP straight in the eye as we walked in. A few people who were a little more conflict averse would stop for coffee across the street and just so happened to arrive at like 9:02, including people who normally preferred to start at 7 a.m. All of this meant that rather than being about half full, the office was virtually empty until 9. The end result of all of this was that the office was virtually empty until exactly 9 a.m. and tended to clear out at exactly 6 p.m. Several people including myself simply stopped responding to anything outside work hours. One of my favorite coworkers also made a show of announcing to her contacts in the Australia office that she could now only meet between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. their time. Calamity ensued. The funny thing is that we never really talked about it before or during, it just sort of happened naturally. The CEO, who had been barely at the office on Monday, Tuesday, finally showed up early on Wednesday, asked why everyone was outside, and we told him. He opened his mouth to protest that no, that wasn't what he meant, realized what was happening, and made a strategic retreat. The policy was formally retracted 2 days later, we never discussed it again, and it was the beginning of a very messy fall from grace for the VP. Last one is titled, How My Boss Gave Me an Extra Week of Holiday. A few years back I worked in a call center for a well-known car rental company. Management was what you would expect from such a place. Micromanagement was everywhere, breaks timed to the minute, you get the gist. Well, you'd be surprised to learn that holidays were no different. On a 60-plus people floor, if 2 people were out on holidays, yours wouldn't get approved. I had been doing this job for a couple of years, so I knew that I had to keep track of my holiday balance as HR was famous for messing up your days. Now that you know what I was dealing with, that particular year, I had managed to get all my holidays approved up until Christmas. Imagine my surprise when my team leader came up to me and told me I had a week left on my balance. I asked her to check with HR because something was obviously wrong. The day after, I get an email from HR basically saying, "No. You wrong. HR right. By the way, you're on holiday next week." That's when I stopped and thought, why am I fighting this? I said okay, took my week off and waited for the phone call. And then it came. My TL announced that the time off given by mistake was due, so I had to either give up a week of next year's balance or it would be deduced from my pay as unpaid time off. I laughed, said no chance, and laughed some more before hanging up. Then I sent an email to a solicitor that confirmed my suspicions of their claims being completely illegal. Next Monday, my TL comes to me before I can even get to my desk and tells me about a meeting she scheduled with me and HR to settle things. Said okay, turned my computer on and forwarded my conversation with the solicitor to HR, my TL and our manager for good measure. Said email read something like, "Do you really want that week back that bad?" 5 minutes later, TL comes back with a carnivorous grin and tells me to go to the manager's office. I get there and find out that my manager was never made aware of the issue. She gets her phone and calls the HR manager, basically tells him to sit on it and then begins to apologize to me. We laugh it off and I leave to start my day. As soon as I get to my desk, I see my TL heading towards the manager's office. She came back looking like a sad puppy. Thanks for listening.